Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday to you. I thought we'd do a little bit of story time to kick off season 3 of $1,000 Car Guy. So when I was about 16 and it was time to get my first car, since we didn't have a lot of money, like most people, we would drive around these old used car dealerships looking for things. Now, in New Jersey, where I grew up, small car dealerships were everywhere. Every couple blocks there'd be another one. And on the hunt to try and find what the first car would be, this little place that I think it was called Mustard's Last Stand, and in the summertime they sold ice cream, but in the wintertime they tanned deer and made jerky and steaks and stuff out of them. So, dual purpose. You gotta watch out for spider webs on this walk. So, one day, while passing by there was a 1972 Datsun 240Z. It was tangerine orange and had a black interior, and the thing was absolutely beautiful. If I remember correctly, it was listed for about $3,800. And at the time, that was also a lot of money because the Z cars weren't as valuable then as they are now. So, I begged my dad, and I'm not sure if my mom was there at the time, but I begged my dad to stop and look at the car. And he's like, what about this one? Why do you want this? I was like, look at it. It looks amazing. It looks awesome. And he's like, this is an old car. You're not going to want to drive this every day. I was like, well, okay, I guess. But I still looked it over. It didn't have any rust on it. It looked like it had been painted within the last couple years. And it looked like it was relatively well maintained. I think it had right around 100,000 miles. Again, we're working on my memory here. So things might be more pristine than I actually say, or they might be a lot worse than I say. Yeah, that's what I meant. Anyway, spider webs. So, we continue our walk. So this car happened to be on the way to my grandparents' house. Basically, every Sunday we went to visit my grandparents, and I would see this car out the passenger side of the window and just lust after it. The body shape was perfect in my mind, and the color was really cool. I thought it would be a really neat car. So a couple weeks go by and I'm like, Dad, please, I think I had to come up with half the money. I said, please, can we stop and look at that Datsun? He's like, you don't want to drive an old car like that for your first car. I was like, yeah, but let me make the choice. Let me make sure that I don't want to drive something like that for my first car. He's like, okay. So we went to go stop and look at it, money in hand, and it was gone. It had sold about 2 days prior. So that was my first Datsun experience. A couple years later, ended up finding a blue one in a very similar fashion, except it was just sitting at somebody's house, nothing special about it. And called up the owner of the car, went to go look at it. By the time I got there, it had already been sold. So, strike 2. Then, a few years later, while visiting my parents, I'd already moved to Pennsylvania at that point. When I went to visit my parents, I saw down by the bowling alley that there was a white one. I think it was a 260 or 280. This one looked like it was in a little bit worse shape, had a bit more rust, but still a complete car, and apparently running and driving. Went to stop and look at it. Okay, there's a phone number, so let's give him a call. Oh, it's already sold. I just haven't moved the car. Great. Strike 3. So 3 times in my life, the Z cars had come up, and by the time I got to them, it was already gone. So, where does that put us? So Leon, who we met in a previous episode, has that radical 240Z, the one with the RB26 in it. That thing is amazing and scary and terrifying, and gives me the scream giggles, or whatever you want to call them, the fear laughs every time I get around that thing, because I remember that thing is an absolute monster.
I'm not going to brake boost it, I'll just get on it a little bit. That's what I'm going to do.
He sent me a message the other day and said, hey, I've got a car for sale, and I'll make you a good offer on it. I was like, okay. So I bought it. allow me to introduce the project car for Season 3, this 1977 Datsun 280Z. Oh, also, I have some of the footage from when Leon delivered the car. It was pouring, as you can see in this next clip. So let's just go over this thing a little bit. Obviously, it was an original yellow car, and then someone painted it like this maroon color. We will get into the interior in a little bit. I should have these little flanges that go on here. Obviously not the stock hood. Leon ended up removing the stock hood so that they could make a carbon fiber mold out of it, him and Lewis. And maybe we'll work something out with them later. So the idea for this new Project Datsun is to replace the Miata, which means it will now be getting the Ford 5.0 and T5 that the Miata was going to get. Although the Datsun is not perfect, it has the least amount of rust I've seen on a Datsun in a very, very long time. So besides being a cheap car that I could buy from a friend, what drew me to this Datsun was the lack of rust. Take for instance around the window. So you'll see it's got the leaves and debris and crap, but that's just leaves and debris. It comes right out. But the seam all the way around the window is absolutely rust free. It's an amazing example of it. Even down at the cowl, there's hardly any rust whatsoever. As we make our way around, you can see around this door guard, there's nothing. It's just leaves and stuff. And then here's the original seam where it came together from the manufacturer. But just clean. No rust. That's amazing. Now the floors are something else. The way that this car opens up is amazing. It opens, well, not like a new car, but like a really well maintained old car. There's that yellow I was talking about before. The floors are very clean. They have surface rust, but so what? This kind of stuff is just weather guard. That's the rubber destroying itself. But here, all clean, all good metal. It just looks weird because it's that kind of old maroon color. But it's just a really good example. I guess we can see how it used to look. Old, new. Old, new. Did you hear that shut? So good. If we look around the back hatch of the car, you can see just no rust. None. We can pop open the hatch. Look at that. Look at the leaves. We gotta clean this car out real bad and fast. Again, on the rear, no rust whatsoever. It's just a super clean example for me to start with. No rear bumper, but I'm not sure if we want to run one anyway. The passenger side of the car is much more of the same, except right down here, right in this rear quarter. But that's it. Even inside the gas filler, I mean, it's just bad paint at this point. It's not like I even need to make excuses for this car. It's just a nice example and at a very affordable price, thanks to Leon. Tires could use a little bit of replacing, but otherwise the rims are pretty cool. They're interesting to look at. And one more pocket of rust down here. Now you're probably wondering what's under the hood. Nothing. Empty engine bay. Now when I said this car was relatively rust free, that meant that it has some rust, and obviously we pointed some out before, but the major part of it ends up being the battery area, just like every other Z car. And unfortunately this kind of led down to the rocker panel on the passenger side. So I've already looked into some replacement panels, and other than doing the work, the panel itself is only like 120 bucks. I've even seen them for like 80 bucks on other websites. So that's a really good price, and it's good to know that the old Datsun community is keeping these things alive like that. They deserve it. It's just a good looking car. So our 5.0 is a very narrow block compared to say the 4.6. It should fit in there just fine. We're going to want it as low as we can get it, and then as tucked far back against the firewall as possible. My plan is to find out where the stock engine and transmission line up in the trans tunnel hole. So this may be a little bit different than other people do when they're mocking up their engines, but I want to put the shifter out right in the middle here first and find out where the engine sits in the bay wise. How many of you knew that the door open handles were on the bottom of the door cards? That's something I learned in Leon's 240Z. It's weird to grab down to open up the door. So as far as the interior goes, it's a little less than complete, you could say. But Leon was nice enough to throw in a new whole dash panel for me. We also have a set of original seats. And they're honestly not in terrible condition, especially when you consider its age from 1977. Oh, and you might be wondering, do the windows work? Yes, they do. Actually, really well. I love manual windows. Shuts so nice. So not only is this dash really nice, but it's complete. It has gauges in it too, so we don't have to get new ones. We may just have to reconfigure their use to work with the new 5.0. We have so many interior parts to go through. Hey look, a drive shaft. Well, that's neat. I'm not really sure what this car is going to be used for. I'm thinking mostly street fun, because it'll take me a long time to source all the interior pieces, although it is a mostly complete interior, so I'm kind of torn. I'm interested to see, once I put the new dash into the front, what that makes it look like. Maybe that will change my mind, because making a panel that covers this back section and then covering it in some vinyl or black carpet is nothing. That takes no work whatsoever to do, and it will look so complete on the car. The thing that this car is missing the most of is actually wiring. Things like the headlights, turn signals, brake lights, stuff like that. I will need that to be able to drive it on the street in Florida, but other than that, there's not a whole lot that I need electrical wise. Everything from my motor is still right there. That's everything I need to make it run, other than a battery. So we're set that way. Now, fixing the rust would probably be most people's major concerns, but to me, I want it to run under its own power. So the first thing I want to do is put that motor in that engine bay. I was going to 3D print myself some motor mounts for mocking up purposes, but as some of you saw from my other channel, Do Something Everyday 2, I snapped the head off of the brass injector nozzle, if you want to call it, the feeder nozzle. So I ordered a new one of those, put that in, and then I just burnt up the electric motor which powers the feeder. So I just ordered a new one of those, so in a few days we'll have that, and I will be able to actually mock up my mounts on the 3D printer. I'll be able to design them using my own software and then basically print out motor mounts. That way I can get the proper fitment. But the goal is to get it as low and as far back as possible, but also maintaining that stock shifter hole location. First things first, before we can actually start this project, I need to do a little bit of house cleaning. There's no way I'm going to start to rip apart a second car when I've already got a first car ripped apart inside here. This used to be paint. Well, apparently the camera stopped recording and I have no idea when, but this is where we ended up with. I stuck that door inside the Mustang, along with the old dash and stuff. A bunch of other miscellaneous stuff. So right now the wiring harness is really the only thing kind of in my way of this workspace, if you will. All the kids' toys are outside for the time being. I might put them into the little shed thing there, or the carport, whatever you want to call it. It's still a mess. It's still disgusting, but I gotta go to the post office. I got things to do today. So that's where we're gonna leave off here. So I think that's where we're gonna end this episode today. Thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you on the next episode, where we actually dive into the 280Z. See you there. So before we close out this video, I just wanted to say thank you to Craftsman again and Sears. They exchanged my ratchet just like I said they would. It's not brand new, it's another rebuilt unit from their stock of rebuilt units that people give back. But yeah, now we got our 3-inch drive back, so cool. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.